At Starbound, we like to tell stories the human way, not with artificial slop or AI voices. What's HFY without humanity? So, subscribe if you want to keep it that way. My name is Dan, and let's begin. Physics dictates that hauling 40 pounds of dead weight through a corridor designed for aerodynamic flow constitutes a terrible idea. Jessie Miles, however, ignored the laws of physics at 7:30 in the morning. She prioritized coffee, which she lacked, and the structural integrity of her shoulders, which currently screamed in protest. Jessie adjusted her grip on the handle of the opaque, climate-controlled transport carrier. Manufacturers promised weightlessness. The crate, a top-of-the-line biosecure transport unit, boasted maglev lifters designed to float the cargo at hip height. Naturally, the maglevs failed the moment she stepped off the orbital shuttle. Now, instead of gliding, the crate dragged across the floor like a lead coffin. The screech of heavy polymer on polished synthetic tile announced her arrival to the entire institute. Screech! Come on, Jessie muttered, kicking the side of the box. Float! Activate the levitation! The box refused. It sat there, heavy with the potential for either total social redemption or absolute academic expulsion. She navigated the pristine white hallways of the Convexity Institute of Risk Negation. The floor featured a friction-optimized polymer that squeaked aggressively if scuffed. But Jessie lacked the energy to lift her feet properly. She operated on 3 hours of sleep. The occupant of the crate had deemed 4 a.m. the perfect time to engage in tactical exploration of bedsheets, an activity involving claws, teeth, and a surprising volume of drool. The Oralith students parted around her like water striking a rock. They moved with a fluid elegance, maintaining the culturally mandated 1.5-meter safety radius. They stood tall and slender, their skin catching the overhead lights like polished black slate. Their sensory veins twitched at the slightest air pressure shift. They smelled of ionized gas, static electricity, and aggressive hand sanitizer. Jessie reeked of warm milk, sawdust, and sandy winds. "Observe the gate," a whisper drifted from a cluster of students near the lockers. "Wasteful. The bipedal impact creates unnecessary vibrations. She damages the floor's microcoating." "The human approaches," another voice replied, dripping with the sort of pity one offers a sentient glitch. "They lack the biological imperative of risk calculus. I heard her parents occupy the orbital habitat, the wet one, with the dirt." Jessie tightened her grip on the crate handle. She focused her eyes forward. Reach the classroom, survive the presentation, prove that dangerous differs from evil, prove that stewardship requires more than hiding. "Miles." The voice, nasally and exacting, immediately raised Jessie's blood pressure 3 notches. She stopped. The heavy crate slammed to the floor with a bone-rattling thud. She turned. Rolly stood in front of his locker, blocking her path with the calculated arrogance of someone who never tripped over his own feet. He ranked first in probability strategy. He presided over the hallway safety monitor club. He championed the art of being a jerk. "Rolly," Jessie said, her voice raspy. "I'd love to chat about the statistical likelihood of you moving, but as you can hear, my maglev's died, and this box weighs as much as your ego." Rolly's sensor veins flicked back, a gesture of amusement mixed with superiority. He glanced at the crate, then back at her, adjusting the collar of his pristine, wrinkle-free uniform. "Another geological sample?" Rolly asked, sneering. "Or perhaps a bacteria colony? You humans possess a fascination with introducing foreign contaminants to sterile environments. You call it biodiversity. We classify that as a hygiene breach." "It's Companion Animal Day, Rolly," Jessie said, flexing her sore fingers. "I brought a companion." Rolly laughed, a sharp click erupting from his throat, like an aggressive stapler. A companion. You mean a parasite you anthropomorphize to cope with your species' pack-bonding neuroses. Identify it. A canine, a rodent, a class 4 biohazard. Does it bite? I secured and vaccinated him, Jessie said, shifting the weight to her other hand. He keeps himself cleaner than you. Doubtful, Rolly countered. I passed through the decontamination mist 3 times this morning. My dermal plating registers 99.9% pathogen-free. Congrats, Jessie deadpanned. You achieved the status of a sterile surface. Parties must adore you. I excel at parties, Rolly said, offended. I organize the seating charts to maximize conversational utility and reduce droplet spread. Guests appreciate me. Jessie stared at him. Right. I have a class to attend. Move. I merely conduct a perimeter check, Rolly said, remaining stationary. He leaned closer to the crate. The intake fans labor. The internal thermal output suggests a high metabolic rate. What does the box contain, Miles? A fusion reactor? Oh, something like that, Jessie muttered. She considered the paperwork she filed. The Auralith bureaucracy enforced strict rules, but they interpreted everything literally. She listed the species as Panthera tigris. The school's translation AI, designed for standard trade languages rather than Earth-specific taxonomy, cross-referenced the root biological family. It saw feline, it saw 4 legs, it saw fur. It also filled the form with feline domestic grade. Technically, she told the truth. A tiger belongs to the feline family. It just happens to be significantly more feline than the administration expected. Move, Rolly, Jessie said, shoving past him. She violated his safety radius by a solid 6 inches. Rolly recoiled as if she emitted radiation, flattening himself against the lockers. You disrupt the traffic flow. Your trajectory breeds chaos. You increase the entropy of this hallway by a factor of 4. Exactly, Jessie called back, dragging the screeching crate behind her. Chaos breeds life, you geometric snobs. And today, I brought the storm. Sterility defined the classroom. The walls radiated a soft, non-threatening white. Diffuse lighting eliminated all shadows that might harbor dust or uncertainty. The desks sat in a hexagonal grid, offering the maximum escape vectors for any seated students. The room resembled a refrigerator more than a school. Professor Hines stood at the front, an elder Auralith with skin like dusty slate. His sensor veins drooped in a state of perpetual anxiety. He looked like a man who checked under his bed for monsters, then verified the bed's frame structural integrity, then consulted the actual tables for bed-related accidents, and finally slept on the floor to ensure safety. Welcome, students, Professor Hines said, his voice trembling. Today brings significance. We explore the concept of stewardship. While Auralith culture dictates risk avoidance, other cultures believe in managing it. He pronounced managing like a synonym for juggling grenades. Jessie hauled her crate to a designated hexagon in the back corner. She collapsed into her chair, breathing heavily. The crate sat on the floor next to her, ominous and silent, a dark monolith in the white room. Let the demonstrations commence, Hines said, tapping his datapad. Please keep all organic variables within your designated containment zones. Who wishes to present their companion first? A student named Gleam stood. She held a glass sphere filled with water. Inside, a ball of green algae spun slowly in circles. Behold, the moss glider, Gleam announced proudly. It requires sunlight and absolute silence. If the decibel levels rise above a whisper, it goes dormant for 3 days to preserve energy. Fascinating, Hines said, visibly relaxing. Does it require tactile interaction? Oh, avoid contact, Gleam said, horrified. Touching it disrupts the pH balance. We observe it from a distance of 1 meter. We share a fulfilling relationship based on mutual ignoring. Excellent, Hines said, marking his pad. Low maintenance, zero unpredictability, a perfect score for safety. Next came a student with a sand skimmer. It resembled a hamster with 6 legs and a severe anxiety disorder. This is Unit 7, the student said. Direct eye contact causes it to freeze. Touch causes it to play dead. Sudden movements cause it to burrow into the substrate and remain submerged for a week. It consumes dust. Marvelous, Hines said. A companion that cleans the environment and remains unobtrusive. Very Auralith. Jessie rolled her eyes so hard they hurt. She leaned down and whispered to the crate. Ignore them. They fail to understand fun. The crate remained silent, but a soft, heavy scratching sound emerged from within. Scritch, scritch, thump. Raleigh, Hines said, looking at the front row. You seem eager to present. Raleigh stood. He walked to the front, carrying a small, sleek container made of transparent aluminum. He placed it on the podium and pressed a button. The lid hissed open. Inside sat a beetle, black, shiny, and completely motionless. This, Raleigh declared, puffing out his chest, is a genetically modified sorting beetle. I programmed its pheromone receptors to respond to the color coding of my stylus collection. He dumped a handful of multicolored pens onto the podium. The beetle sprang to life. It scurried around, grabbing the pens with its pincers and arranging them into parallel lines sorted by the color spectrum from infrared to ultraviolet. Observe, Raleigh said, gesturing grandly. It creates order. It requires no affection. It requires no play. It exists solely to increase logical output. Behold, the ultimate companion. The class broke into polite, rhythmic applause. Clap, pause, clap, pause, clap. Raleigh soaked it in, his sensory veins vibrating with smug satisfaction. He looked directly at Jessie in the back. Surpass that, human, Raleigh said, his voice dripping with challenge. Show us your chaotic variable. Does it sort? Does it clean? Or does it merely consume resources and occupy space? Jessie stood. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound cut through the applause like a knife. It consumes resources, Jessie said, lifting the heavy crate. She walked to the front. Every step required a struggle against gravity. But we keep them for other reasons. She reached the podium. She slammed the crate down. Thud. The vibration rattled Raleigh's pens. His sorting beetle froze, terrified by the seismic activity. You treat risk like a plague, Jessie said, addressing the room. You calculate the odds of failure and you flee. But on Earth, we embrace risk. We respect it. We believe true strength requires holding danger in your hands and teaching it kindness. A logical paradox, Raleigh pointed out. Danger precludes kindness. Danger defines itself. A variable cannot function as its opposite. Watch, Jessie said. She reached for the maglocks on the front of the crate. She disengaged the first one. Clack! The sound echoed in the quiet room. She disengaged the second. Clack! The front panel hissed and lowered slowly, revealing the dark interior. Jessie reached into the darkness. Come here, buddy. Wake up and meet the neighbors. A grumble emerged. A low, vibrating sound felt in the chest before the ears registered it. The sound of a subterranean engine firing. Jessie pulled him out. Kenai was 2 months old. He weighed 13 pounds, which was a little on the light side, so Jessie was instructed to keep him on formula for a few weeks longer than normal. A ball of orange and black fury, covered in fur soft as a cloud and striped with the markings of Earth's most lethal jungle predator. His paws equaled the size of soup plates. His tail, thick and heavy, twitched with a life of its own. He blinked against the harsh classroom lights. He opened his mouth and vocalized. Meow. The squeak, raspy and high-pitched, betrayed his infancy, but it carried the unmistakable acoustic signature of a carnival. The sound declared, "I am small now, but one day I shall rule." The room reacted instantly and violently. Every Auralith student pushed their chair back. A singular synchronized movement created a deafening screech of metal on polymer. "By the stars!" Rolly screamed, leaping onto his desk with a vertical jump that defied gravity. "A predator!" Identify! Identify! Professor Hines shrieked, fumbling for his bioscanner. He pointed it at the cub. The scanner emitted a red warning beep. "The eyes, binocular vision, forward-facing, hunter, man-eater!" "Calm down!" Jessie shouted, clutching Kenai to her chest. Kenai, startled by the noise and the scent of alien fear, dug his claws into her uniform. Jessie winced but held on. "He's a baby! A tiger cub!" "A tiger!" Rolly yelled, his voice cracking an octave higher. "I reviewed the archives. Panthera tigris, apex hypercarnivore, solitary ambush predator. It consumes primates for sport. It possesses a bite force of 1,000 psi or more." "His jaw strength remains theoretical," Jessie snapped. "He's teething. He drinks milk formula and eats only a bit of bovine particulate. Look at him. He wobbles." She set Kenai down on the podium. Kenai observed the sea of terrified aliens. He tilted his head, his big blue eyes widened with confusion. He attempted a step toward Rolly's beetle, but his massive paws proved too large for his body. He tripped over his own left foot and sprawled onto his belly. Bump! He let out a confused squeak and looked at Jessie as if to ask, "Why does the floor attack me?" "Malfunction detected," a student in the front row whispered, trembling. "Locomotion defective." "Clumsiness," Jessie corrected. She reached into the side pouch of the crate and pulled out a bottle of warmed formula. "He grows into his feet. Now everyone, silence yourselves. Feeding time commences, and scaring him causes indigestion, which leads to tiger vomit. Nobody wants that." Jessie sat on the edge of the podium. She scooped Kenai back into her lap. She uncapped the bottle and brushed the nipple against her nose. Kenai's eyes crossed. He smelled the milk. The predator instinct kicked in. Not to kill, but to consume dairy with extreme prejudice. He latched onto the bottle with aggressive enthusiasm. Slurp, slurp, gulp, gulp. His ears twitched rhythmically with every swallow. His front paws reached out and kneaded Jessie's arm. The claws extended and retracted. Scritch, scritch. "He punctures you!" Rolly, horrified, watched from the safety of his desktop fortress. "You bleed. The beast harvests your biomatter." Jessie looked down at the small scratches on her arm. "Just bleeding. A sign of happiness. It stimulates milk flow in their mothers. He thinks I'm his mom." Silence claimed the class. They watched the human girl, holding a creature designed by evolution for murder, letting it chew on a plastic bottle while poking holes in her arm. "Why?" Professor Hines asked, his voice a whisper. "Why submit to such damage? Illogical." "Because he needs me," Jessie said softly, wiping a drop of milk from Kenai's chin. "And because of the softness. You guys lack any concept of how soft he is." For a moment, the tension held. A tableau of cross-species confusion. The Auralith saw a monster eating a human. The human saw a baby eating lunch. Then the milk ran out. Jessie pulled the bottle away. Okay, Kenai? Finished. Time for a burp. She turned to put the empty bottle back in the bag. A tactical error occurred. A momentary lapse in awareness. In the 2 seconds Jessie looked at the bag, Kenai sensed freedom. He wiggled. He slid. He poured himself off Jessie's lap like a liquid stripe of physics. He hit the floor with a soft thud. "Breach!" Rolly screamed. "Containment breach!" Kenai shook his head. He sneezed. Achoo! He observed the hexagonal forest of desk legs. To an orolith, a classroom. To a tiger cub, a jungle gym. Movement caught his eye. Rolly, trembling on top of his desk, shifted his weight. His foot slipped off the edge. His boot dangled. And on that boot, a shoelace hung. Green, shiny, a hard plastic aglet swung back and forth like a pendulum. Swing, swing. Kenai's ocular apertures expanded until darkness swallowed the blue irises. His butt wiggled. Once, twice, 3 times for calibration. "Freeze!" Jessie warned, stepping off the podium. "Rolly, cease the foot swinging." "Terror induces trembling," Rolly shouted. "An involuntary autonomic response. My central nervous system rejects reality." Kenai launched. Grace abandoned the leap. A tactical tumble ensued. He threw himself into the air, miscalculated the gravity, and collided with Rolly's shin. He slid down the boot, wrapped his massive paws around the ankle, and sank his teeth into the green shoelace. Gnaw, gnaw, growl. Rolly froze. Rigidity seized his entire body. His sensory veins stood straight up, vibrating into a blur. "It holds me," Rolly whispered. Color drained from his face, turning him a sickly translucent gray. "Captured! Tell my mother I organized her spice rack before my demise." Jessie rushed forward. "Kenai, no! Drop it!" She reached to pry the cub off, but Professor Hines slammed his hand onto his desk with shocking force. "Hold!" Hines bellowed. The command, authoritative and unlike his usual nervous self, stopped Jessie mid-reach. "What?" Jessie asked. "He just chews the lace. I'll remove him." "Avoid contact." Hines pointed a shaking finger at Rolly. "Observe the student. Observe the interaction. Interference with the choosing is forbidden." Rolly looked down at his foot. Kenai looked up at Rolly. The cub still held the shoelace in his mouth. He paused his chewing. He blinked. Then Kenai vocalized. A friendly greeting. A sound tigers use to say, "Hello, I will delay eating you. You function as interesting furniture." The orolith gasped. "The seal's voice," Hines whispered. "The histories spoke truth." Explain," Jessie demanded. "He just said hi." "He cornered his prey," Hines recited, his eyes wide. "He engaged physically. He refrained from the killing strike, and he vocalized acceptance." Rolly looked at Jessie, his eyes filled with horror so profound it transcended species barriers. "The war code," Rolly squeaked. "He initiated the choosing." "The what?" "In ancient times," Rolly said, tears of terror leaking from his eyes. "Before the great safety, before the domes, we fought wars. If a warrior cornered an enemy and touched them without killing them, it signified a claim, a life debt. The enemy became a ward." Rolly looked down at the tiger cub, who resumed chewing on the plastic aglet with renewed vigor. "I function as his ward," Rolly whispered. "I belong to the predator." "Oh, for crying out loud!" Jessie groaned. "He lacks warrior status. He's an infant. He simply enjoys your shoelaces." "Intent implies nothing," Hines cried. The ritual is instinctual. Separating them now violates the sanctity of the choosing. Raleigh would face shame, marked as unworthy of mercy. Oh, filing a tax return would become a fantasy. Suddenly, the classroom door hissed shut. The maglocks engaged with a heavy thud clank. Orange lights began to flash on the ceiling. Identify the alarm, Jessie said. Code Sanctum initiated, Hines said, backing toward the comms panel. I alerted the headmaster. The ritual demands observation. Raleigh, accept your fate. Raleigh looked at the 13 pounds of apex predator attached to his foot, which was really quite small for a 2-month-old tiger. But Kenai may as well have been a 600-pound adult for all the seriousness in Raleigh's expression. I accept, Raleigh whimpered. I am the ward. 10 minutes later, the situation devolved from misunderstanding to diplomatic incident. Headmaster Virgil stood outside the door, a tall, imposing Orlith in robes of office stiff enough to serve as concrete reinforcements. He peered through the small observation window, looking pale. Jessie stood in the middle of the room. Raleigh remained on one leg, afraid to move the foot Kenai currently used as a pillow. The rest of the students had evacuated to the upper observation gallery, pressing their faces against the glass to watch the drama unfold like a gladiator match. The delivery slot in the door slid open. We lack the ceremonial armband of the ward. Headmaster Virgil's voice boomed over the intercom, sounding frantic. Renovations closed the museum. However, I procured a substitute. A hand thrust a crumpled ball of bright red caution tape through the slot. Use this, Virgil commanded. Red, it signifies the blood oath. Wrap it around your arm, Raleigh. Haste is required before the beast senses your lack of heraldry. This is adhesive tape, Raleigh noted, his voice trembling. It constitutes the bond, Virgil shouted. Raleigh reached down, moving with glacial slowness to avoid disturbing the sleeping tiger, and took the tape. He wrapped a strip around his upper arm. It adhered to his uniform. I accept, Raleigh said to the air. The tape binds me. Then here are the duties, Virgil intoned. You function as the shield. You function as the provider. You function as the servant. If the master hungers, feed him. If the master cries, soothe him. If the master becomes displeased, Virgil trailed off ominously. And the consequences of his displeasure? Raleigh asked. The ritual breaks, and society casts you out as a failure of preservation. Great, Jessie muttered. Zero pressure. Suddenly, the intercom crackled again. A new voice cut through, human, loud, female. Open this door immediately or I will disassemble the locking mechanism with a laser cutter. Mom? Jessie groaned, burying her face in her hands. Dr. Eleanor Miles and Dr. Aris Miles appeared at the observation window next to the headmaster. Jessie's mother pressed her face against the glass, radiating fury. Her father looked at a datapad, radiating fascination. Jessie! Her mom shouted, her voice muffled by the thick glass, but amplified by the intercom. We broke the atmospheric speed limit to reach you. A ticket for entering the stratosphere at Mach 5. It costs a fortune. We rattled the Senate windows. I requested standard velocity, Jessie shouted back at the ceiling microphone. Notification alerted us to a species-level hostage situation, her dad chimed in. Naturally, we assumed you brought the tiger. Did you bring a Panthera tigris to a prey species educational facility? Mom yelled. Insanity! We discussed this. We discussed contextual appropriateness. They bullied me, Jessie shouted. I wanted to prove he fails to qualify as a monster. You failed, Mom yelled. He currently holds a student hostage in a religious ceremony involving adhesive tape. Eleanor, calm down. Dad's voice came over the line. He sounded calm, surprisingly calm. As an exo-anthropologist, this represented the highlight of his decade. Breaching the door exceeds our capabilities. Would you watch me? Mom growled. She pulled a multi-tool from her belt. No, observe the readings, Dad said. Oral stress hormones are spiking. If we break in and forcibly remove the cub, the boy, Rolly, will be seen as rejected. Their culture views a rejected ward as bad luck incarnate. Employment vanishes, marriage evaporates, pariah status ensues. He moves to a mining colony. Rolly listened, his eyes whitening. Truth? My hands require delicate work. Mining is beyond my capabilities. It appears so, Dad said. To save your social standing, Rolly, you must complete the ritual. Survive the day with the tiger. Rolly looked down at his foot. Kenai twitched in his sleep, dreaming of chasing butterflies. Survive the day, Rolly repeated. He looked at Jessie. Your beast. State the hunger frequency. Every 3 hours, Jessie said. Rolly checked his wrist chrono. 4 hours remain until school concludes. Significant duration. He inhaled deeply. He straightened his spine. Terror filled him, but so did his Oralith nature. He functioned as a creature of logic and calculation. If this was a test, he would solve it. I require data, Rolly said. Jessie, brief me. List the weaknesses. Does a shut-off switch exist? Does he respond to voice commands? He has a belly rub spot, Jessie offered. But it's a trap. Prolonged rubbing results in biting. Rolly pulled out a datapad. Variable tolerance threshold? Noted. Proceed. The next 4 hours resembled a descent into madness, rather than a span of time. The classroom transformed into a training ground. It began 30 minutes later. Kenai woke, stretched, and circled clockwise rapidly, sniffing the floor with intense focus. Jessie's eyes widened. Sanitation alert! Sanitation alert! Rolly froze. Define sanitation alert. A weapon? Does he prepare a sonic attack? His bowels demand attention, Jessie shouted. Grab him, place him on the synth grass pad in the corner. My database lacks waste extraction software, Rolly yelled, backing away. I'm a theoretical strategist, not a sanitation engineer. Pick him up, now, or the floor suffers. Rolly looked at the circling tiger. He looked at the pristine white floor, which cost more than his family's transport pod. He performed a calculation. The social cost of a tiger defecating on the classroom floor while he served as ward equaled infinite shame. It would stain his permanent file. Rolly moved. He moved with the speed of an Oralith dodging a falling rock. He swooped in, hands trembling. Forgive me, Master, Rolly whispered. He scooped up the cub. Kenai looked surprised, legs dangling, tail swishing. Rolly sprinted across the room, holding the tiger at arm's length like a bomb. Deploying payload! Rolly shrieked. He deposited Kenai on the square of artificial grass Jessie had prepared. Kenai sniffed the grass. He crouched. He looked Rolly in the eye. He performed his function. Rolly stood back, chest heaving, hands held out in a surgical clear pose. Target functioned, Rolly announced to the room, his voice cracking. Up in the observation gallery, the students broke into wild cheers. They waved their hands in the air. By the core, Rolly breathed, checking his heart rate monitor. This terrifying event of my life concludes. I require sanitizer. Okay, Jessie said, wiping the floor where Rolly had sweated. He is awake. He needs stimulation. She slid a rubber chew toy across the floor, shaped like a bone. Its neon pink colour offended Rolly's aesthetic sensibilities. Teething, Jessie explained. His gums itch. Lack of chew toys leads to chosen chew toys. Furniture often suffers. Ankles sometimes suffer. Electrical wiring occasionally suffers. Rolly eyed the toy. I present the effigy? You must become the toy, Jessie said. Wiggle it. Make it interesting. Trigger the prey drive. Then let him catch it. Build his confidence. I refuse to build his confidence, Rolly argued, scandalized. I desire low esteem and sedentary behavior. A confident predator represents a tactical disadvantage. It's not about what you desire. Just do it. Rolly held the rubber bone. He wiggled it tentatively. Kenai, busy stalking a dust bunny, froze. His ears swiveled. He spotted the wiggling pink object. He crouched. The butt wiggle commenced. Oscillation detected, Rolly noted, his voice tight. He charges his kinetic potential. Brace yourself, Jessie advised. Kenai launched. He scrambled across the slick floor, claws seeking traction. A fuzzy orange tornado. Rolly flinched, but stood his ground. He held out the toy. Kenai slammed into Rolly's hand, wrapping paws around the rubber bone and biting down with a ferocious growl. Rolly squeezed his eyes shut, anticipating complete and total amputation, perhaps even decapitation. But teeth hit rubber. Claws hooked into the toy, brushing against Rolly's skin without breaking it. Rolly opened one eye. He observed the tiger cub engaging in a violent tug-of-war with his hand. Strength, Rolly gasped, pulling back. Kenai pulled back harder, growling through his nose. Significant talk. Make him earn the victory, Jessie coached. Work for it. Rolly gritted his teeth. I yield nothing. I am the ward, keeper of the bone. For 5 minutes, they wrestled. Rolly, the boy who sanitized his hands after touching door handles, rolled on the floor with a jungle cat. White cat hair covered his uniform. Sweat dripped. And a smile appeared. Small, weird, confused, but present. Finally, Kenai released the toy, panted twice, and flopped onto his side. System crash, Jessie said. Rolly sat up, breathing hard. He examined his hand, slobbery but intact. I survived the engagement, Rolly said, a note of wonder in his voice. I engaged in physical combat with an apex predator and retained all my digits. Later, aboard Rolly rummaged through Jessie's bag. Identify this? Rolly demanded, pulling out a small silver cylinder. Leave the button alone, Jessie warned. Rolly pressed the button. A red dot appeared on the floor. Kenai, previously resting, exploded into action. Running proved too slow. He teleported. He slammed into the floor where the dot sat. Rolly jumped, moving the laser to the wall. Kenai climbed the wall. He scrambled up the whiteboard, leaving deep scratch marks on the safety guidelines list. Deactivate it, Jessie yelled. The variable defies control, Rolly shouted, waving the laser wildly. The dot moved across Jessie's chest. Kenai observed Jessie's torso with extreme interest. Oh no, she whispered. Jessie tackled Rolly just as Kenai launched himself at the red dot, determined to take Rolly down with her. They collapsed in a heap, human, alien, and tiger. My dignity, Rolly groaned from under the pile. Eradicated. Eventually, peace returned. Kenai tired himself out and flopped down on Rolly's foot again, pinning him in place. Rolly remained too afraid, or perhaps too respectful, to move his foot. Jessie sat nearby, working on biology homework. Rolly attempted to read a textbook on advanced risk mitigation, but his gaze kept drifting to the cub. "Jessie," Rolly said softly. "Yeah?" "Explain your species logic," Rolly asked. He gestured to the sleeping cub. "Why do this? This creature embodies disorder. It consumes meat. It requires constant surveillance. It offers no utility. It fails to sort pens. Why preserve it?" Jessie put down her stylus. She looked up at the observation gallery, where the other students watched in silence. "We nearly lost them," Jessie said. "Long ago, on Earth, we thought like you. We defined safety as the absence of wild things. We paved the forests. We killed the predators because fear dictated our actions." She reached out and stroked Kenai's fur. "Then we realized a world without them felt lonely. Safe, but empty. We learned that apex status doesn't grant the right to kill everything else. It demands responsibility for everything else. A duty to protect things that can hurt you." Rolly looked at Kenai. He reached out a trembling finger. He touched the soft white fur behind the cub's ear. Kenai refrained from biting. He leaned into the touch and emitted a soft, chuffing noise. The vibration traveled up Rolly's arm. His eyes widened. "Vibration detected," Rolly whispered. "A chuff," Jessie said. "It indicates affection or happiness." Rolly stared at the cub. "Affection. I serve as prey." "You serve as ward," Jessie corrected. "Family. Kenai views you as a super fun playmate, basically." Rolly sat with the thought. The logic felt messy, wasteful, but the vibration in his finger felt logical, in a way no equation could capture. The long day took its toll. Overstimulation plagued Kenai. Play occurred, naps occurred, pooping occurred. Now, crankiness reigned. A whine began the descent, low, pitiful, grating on the nerves. "Fatigue," Jessie said, checking the time. "And hunger returns." "I shall prepare the nutrient vessel," Rolly said, reaching for the bag. Confidence filled him. He functioned as master of the beast. But Kenai rejected the weight. The whine escalated. It evolved into a yowl, and then it evolved into the scream. If you have never heard a tiger cub scream for its mother, imagine a chainsaw cutting through a chalkboard, amplified by a megaphone, filled with the absolute dread of abandonment. "Row!" The sound hit the resonant frequency of the Aurelus skull. Rolly dropped the bottle. He covered his ears. "Cease the noise! A sonic weapon! My auditory receptors bleed!" Suddenly, a siren blared. A harsh, mechanical voice echoed through the room. "Acoustic anomaly detected. Structural integrity at risk. Deploying dampening measures." "Identify!" Jessie shouted over the screaming tiger. "The silence measure," Rolly yelled. "The room predicts glass fatigue. It deploys acoustic dampening foam." "Foam?" "Heavy expanding foam. It fills the room to absorb sound waves." "Danger level." "High," Rolly cried. "Designed for machinery rooms. It consumes oxygen to starve fires." Thick white foam poured from the ceiling vents. It fell like heavy snow, expanding instantly upon contact with the floor. "Kenai!" Jessie screamed. "Suffocation! His lungs are too small!" She lunged for the podium, where Kenai screamed, but a wall of foam dropped between them. It rose fast, waist-high in seconds. "Measure 9 active!" Headmaster Virgil shouted over the intercom. "The beast breaks the school! The ward failed!" Rolly, curled on the floor, heard the word. Failed. He saw the foam rising. He saw Jessie fighting through the white sludge, coughing. He saw the tiger cub still screaming on the podium, about to be engulfed by the expanding silence. Rolly's mind raced. Risk calculus. Option A. Remain stationary, await extraction, survival probability 99%. Result, cub suffocates, ritual failed, eternal shame. Option B, intervene. Dangerous. Result, survival probability 40%, social redemption probability 100%. But a new variable appeared, a variable Rolly neglected until today. Variable C. The cub chuffed at me. This appears to be a happy sound. "Oh, calculus be damned!" Rolly snarled. He sprang up. He sprinted toward the danger. He snatched the bottle from the floor. He inhaled deeply, filling his lungs before the oxygen vanished, and dove into the foam. He swam through the white sludge, heavy, cold. He reached the podium. Kenai screamed, mouth wide open, eyes squeezed shut. The foam hovered inches from his nose. Rolly slammed his hand onto the emergency manual override button on the side of the podium. A button he memorized during his first week because he memorized all safety overrides. Clunk! The vent hissed and stopped, but the foam remained. Rolly grabbed the cub. He shoved the nipple of the bottle into the open mouth. Glock! The scream cut off instantly. Rolly continued. He pulled a portable emergency rebreather unit from his belt, standard Auralith student issue, and pressed the face seal over the cub's nose and mouth, threading the bottle through the port. He curled around the tiger, creating a shield with his body. He lay there in the foam, holding the respirator, holding the bottle. Silence returned to the room, broken only by the aggressive, slurping sound of a tiger cub inhaling lunch through a rebreather. Slurp, slurp, gulp. The sirens ceased. The door locks disengaged with a clunk. Headmaster Virgil burst into the room, followed by Jessie's parents and a cleaning crew with vacuums. "Rolly!" Virgil shouted, wading through the foam. "Status report!" Rolly sat up. He resembled a marshmallow that had survived war. White foam covered him, red caution tape peeled off. He smelled of chemicals and milk. Kenai lay limp in his arms, milk-drunk and safe, breathing clean air from the unit. Rolly looked at the headmaster. He looked at Jessie, who wiped foam from her eyes. He lifted his chin. "The threat stands pacified," Rolly said, his voice ringing with a new, strange steel. "The ward protects." Jessie's dad rushed forward with a scanner. "He utilized the rebreather. The oxygen levels read perfect. Quick thinking, young man." Rolly looked down at the sleeping predator. "Necessary logic," he lied. "Replacing the specimen presented logistical difficulties." Jessie grinned. She waded over and punched him lightly on the shoulder. "Nice save, Ward." The school day technically concluded, but one final hurdle remained: the assembly. "Rolly," Jessie's dad said, looking at his datapad as cleaning bots sucked up the last of the foam. "I discovered a loophole in the ancient texts. Since the predator is satiated and dormant, you may invoke the passing of the torch. Hand the cub to me, and we depart. You can skip the public walk." Rolly stood. He adjusted his ruined uniform. He looked at the door, where hundreds of students waited in the hall to see the monster. He looked at Kenai, who snored softly, drooling on Rolly's sleeve. "No," Rolly said. "No?" Virgil asked. "But Rolly, the risk, the liability." "The ritual requires the ward to present the trophy of peace to the community," Rolly said. "Quitting now leaves the dataset incomplete. I must conclude the experiment." He hoisted the heavy cub into his arms. Kenai hung like a striped sack of potatoes. "I carry him," Rolly stated. "Jessie attends as my advisor." Jessie beamed. "Lead the way, boss." They walked out the classroom. The hallway fell silent. Rolly walked down the center of the corridor. He refused to flinch. He ignored his safety radius. He walked with the heavy, purposeful stride of someone carrying a nuclear bomb he had personally befriended. Students pressed themselves against the lockers. As Rolly approached, the crowd parted, not just the usual 1.5 meters, but a full 5 meters. Moses parting the Red Sea, if Moses lived as a nerd holding a tiger. They stared with wide, terrified eyes. But as Rolly passed, the terror shifted. They saw the monster asleep. They saw Rolly, the coward, holding it. "He holds the death beast," someone whispered. "He tamed it," another whispered back. "Rolly tamed the chaos." Rolly heard them. He sensed the veins twitching. He stood taller. "Numbness claims my arms," Rolly whispered to Jesse, out the side of his mouth. "Density exceeds expectations. Lead composition?" "Muscle density," Jesse whispered back. "Don't drop him. Waking him invites biting." "Understood. I hold him until skeletal failure occurs." They reached the main auditorium. Rolly walked up the stairs to the stage. He placed the sleeping Kenai on the velvet cushion usually reserved for the Academic Excellence Award. Rolly stepped up to the microphone. Feedback squealed, but no one covered their ears. Mesmerization held them. Rolly looked down at the sea of faces. He looked at his notes for his original speech about the sorting beetle. He crumpled the paper and dropped it. "I believed," Rolly began, his voice echoing in the hall, "that safety equals the absence of variables. I believed the perfect life formed a straight line." He looked at Jesse, who gave him a thumbs up. "But the humans, they taught me the power of complexity." He gestured to the sleeping tiger. "This creature embodies danger, unpredictability. It bites, it defecates without a schedule, it screams at decibel levels that trigger foam systems." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. "But," Rolly continued, placing a hand on the cub's flank, "caring for it requires a strength greater than evasion. It requires the strength to stay. We Orolith calculate the odds of death. Humans calculate the odds of life. I believe we should recalculate." As if on cue, Kenai woke. He yawned, a big yawn. Teeth displayed themselves. The front row gasped and flinched back. Kenai sat up. He looked around. He spotted Rolly's shoe. He reached out a paw to bat at the aglet. The audience screamed silently. Rolly refused to freeze. He refused to calculate escape vectors. He calmly reached down, intercepted the massive paw with his hand, and shook it gently. "Not now, friend," Rolly said calmly. "We stand in polite company." He guided Kenai's paw back to the cushion. Kenai accepted the redirection, licked his nose, and lay back down. Dominance manifested through understanding. The auditorium exploded. Orolith eschewed applause. They stomped their feet. The sound resembled thunder, the ovation of the master of risks. Jessie stepped forward. She unpeeled the red caution tape from Rolly's arm. "The debt is paid," Jessie said formally. "The life is spared. The bond concludes." She picked up Kenai and placed him back in his transport crate. Rolly bowed to the crate. Deep, sincere. "Goodbye, little chaos," he whispered. Outside the school, the sun set, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. Jessie's parents stood by the transport vehicle. Mom looked exhausted. Dad looked like he intended to write a book about the last 6 hours. "Consider yourself grounded," Mom said immediately, "until you turn 30, maybe 40. "Fair," Jessie admitted. "Totally fair." "Court awaits us regarding the speed violation," Dad added. "But impressive." "Jessie!" Rolly came running up to them. Breathlessness overtook him. He had changed his shirt, but a few white hairs clung to his pants. "Rolly," Jessie said, "you were awesome in there." "I analyzed the data," Rolly said quickly, ignoring the compliment. "I researched Earth biology." "Oh?" "Yes. Apparently, Panthera tigris requires significant caloric intake and socialization walks to remain docile. Jessie smiled. She leaned against the crate. They do. The work demands effort. Rolly straightened his collar. He attempted a casual look, but his sensor veins twitched excitedly. I volunteered to assist, Rolly said. To ensure the safety of the school perimeter, of course. I developed a strategy for the shoelace variable. Oh, really? Yes. Velcro, Rolly said triumphantly. I will purchase Velcro boots. The beast cannot chew what fails to dangle. Jessie laughed. She opened the crate door a crack so Rolly could peek in. Kenai sat awake, chewing on his own tail. Sure, Rolly, Jessie said. Come by the habitat this weekend. Bring Velcro. I will bring chainmail, Rolly corrected seriously. And perhaps a stake. A small one, for diplomacy. He waved stiffly to her parents, then turned and walked back toward the school. A group of students surrounded him immediately, asking him how it felt to hold a storm in his arms. Rolly stood tall, gesturing with his hands, recounting the battle of the rubber bone, with significant embellishment. Jessie climbed into the transport. As they lifted off, leaving the sterile white school behind, she listened to the hum of the engine and the soft scritch-scratch of Kenai in his box. They laughed at the human, they mocked the danger, but as Jessie watched Rolly holding court below, she knew the truth. They transported more than a pet to school. They brought a little bit of humanity to the Orolith. And, judging by the way Rolly walked now, like a man who faced the jungle and won, they would be just fine.